Hi, guys. I am Jen Johnson, and this is Thought by Thought Healing, where I like to talk about chronic pain and why, when we address the brain and the fear, anxiety, pain avoidance cycle, we really can recover from these very real symptoms in our bodies. So, today I had the honor of interviewing Rob, who is the founder of TMS Wiki and goes by Forest Online. And he's going to talk about his story of healing, his story of being in pain, and how when he discovered TMS or mind body syndrome, he was able to recover from a lot of repetitive strain injury, which was actually brain generated and not actually a structural issue. So, a little bit about him. He writes, after an 18-year battle with neuroplastic symptoms attributed to repetitive strain injury, which is overuse injury, Rob, who's known as Forest Online, fully recovered by employing a mind-body approach. Inspired by his recovery, he founded TMS Wiki, the largest peer-driven resource dedicated to educating the public about neuroplastic symptoms. He also created the Thank You, Dr. Sarno tribute book, which was featured in Dr. Sarno's New York Times obituary. He goes on to talk about just his passion for making sure that those of us and you that are stuck in the cycle of fear pain can actually recover. And we both share this passion of getting this information out there for those of you who want to recover and take your life back. All right, guys, enjoy Rob, and I will see you in a couple weeks. Bye. Okay, so here we are. I'm super excited. I have Rob Munger here. Um, Rob is the founder of TMS Wiki, which we're going to get into later, but I'm sure a lot of you followers have learned a lot from that website. But before we get
Nope.
there, Rob, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for having this podcast and spreading the word.
Yep, that's what we're about, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. And giving people hope.
Yeah. Yes. That hope is it's such an important part of healing, right?
Yeah. And I feel like, with the stories that you put up, I could go on. I don't want to sidetrack you. I think you've got a thing, but yeah, I think it's important what you do. I'm sure you give a lot to your audience.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Okay, well, let's start a long time ago. Um, Tell us just a little bit about your story, where you come from, um,
Sure.
pre-pain, if there was a time, whatever that looks like for you.
Yes. I was a kid from New Hampshire. Grew up in southern New Hampshire, and I've always been a computer guy, so I enjoyed computers. And um, my mother died when I was 9. That's important to get into the story early.
Yep.
My
Okay.
dad raised me after 9, and uh, so yeah, I was just kind of doing my thing as a high school student. And my symptoms, pain for me started at age 16.
Wow.
So
Mm.
this was at that, it seems like certain diagnoses become trendy. So yeah, no, and this goes back a long time, even back in the 1800s. There's a book by, I think, Shorter, who talks about some of the some of the diagnoses throughout history that have become the you might call them TMS equivalents or whatever you want to call them, the neuroplastic symptoms of their day, the diagnoses. And the back when I started getting my symptoms, one of the so like in the 1800s, it was like hysteria, or I think one of the Roosevelts had a chronic fatigue-like syndrome. Anyway, there are
Right.
we could talk forever about the different ones which are trendy today, um,
Mm.
uh, like Ehlers-Danlos,
Mm-hmm.
say COVID. Uh,
Lyme.
yeah, there you go. But uh, the at the time when it was repetitive strain injury, which was going after people who use computers, and I was one of those people.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Um,
Mm.
so yeah, that's how it started for me.
Repetitive strain injury, overuse injury, same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the thing. Yeah.
That's interesting because I just finished an interview with at least Dr. Alicia Batson, and
Yeah.
her diagnosis was same thing. So
No
two
kidding.
interviews back in a row. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It,
Um,
it-
So what were your primary symptoms then?
So yeah, my symptoms are different from other people. I think the real symptoms for me was the bottom line is for 18 years, um, it seemed like whatever activities I depended on that I needed to do for activities of daily living or for work, if I did them a lot, then they would become painful. That you call it an overuse syndrome, that it was like I was everything was overuse. So
Yeah.
everything it seemed like would damage my body. Uh,
Mm.
and the more I did something, the more I cared about it, the more likely it was to be overuse,
Yeah.
repetitive strain that damaged my body, and the more painful it would become.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go to my doctors and I would say, "What's going on? Why is this happening?" And they would say, "You have a repetitive strain injury. You have to be more careful with your body.
Uh-huh.
You're doing too much and you need to do less." And they might also prescribe PT, and so I'd get the stretches and the exercises. But the way that they explained it to me is that this was caused by overuse and I needed to do less. And
Mm-hmm.
so the real experience that I had was losing freedom, was losing the ability to do the things that I needed to do to feel safe, frankly, over the course of, um, say, yeah, about 5 years. Um, so it started when I was in high school, age 16. I think it kind of peaked when I was maybe 20. Um,
Okay.
and so it just kind of built up. The activities that I couldn't do slowly grew. And I was terrified and trying to protect myself and avoid long-term damage
Mhm.
by cutting out activities less and less and less.
Yeah. So your life shrunk.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay. So the things you needed to feel safe. Boy,
Yeah.
that's a nasty cycle, isn't it? You need
Yeah.
it, which means there's a perception of danger if you don't have it.
There you go. Yes. Yeah. So
Hmm.
lots of feelings of danger floating around. Absolutely. Yep.
Hmm. Hmm. Did that, what do you think, what do you think caused the pain in the first place? What was the
Um,
original cause? Was it an
I
injury?
mean, I think I was going through a lot of stress.
Okay.
I like to think of myself as kind of an absent-minded teacher type,
Okay.
on the technical side. And, I'm going through life and I'm trying to figure out where my spot in it is. And
Uh-huh.
my family is pretty hard driving. They have high expectations.
Uh-huh.
And I think that because of my own disorganization, attention issues, I had difficulty meeting that standard, and that put a lot of pressure on me.
Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
and so, that was challenging. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you're going through a time of stress and pressure, and you feel it in your body.
Yeah.
And
And it's that reinforcing cycle that you were talking about before.
yeah.
So you want to meet these standards. You're working, you're struggling to meet these standards. I think a lot of people can relate to this, right? Like you're you're trying to do this thing and then your body makes it harder and you can't do it anymore. And you feel like you have to. And to some degree, if you want to maintain the lifestyle you thought you had before, it is a bit of a crisis. So that created a kind of a cycle of anxiety for me.
Yeah. Okay. So your response was obviously you didn't know about the mind-body connection yet. So
Nothing about it. Yeah.
what did you try? What did you do?
I went to, I just went to doctors. My father is a physician and he kind of took over my care to some degree. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Huh?
So, I mean, he would say, maybe you need PT, maybe you need OT. And I guess I would officially, I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
Um, so somehow I would end up at PT. Somehow I would end up at OT.
Uh-huh.
And I would do that and it wouldn't really help.
Uh-huh.
And so, and I wouldn't go to more doctor's appointments, but the symptoms would continue to get worse. And they would do it slowly over the course of years. So at first, it was just typing and mousing, 16, 17, 18. And it would only be if I were, using the computer for a very long time, on the order of hours.
Okay.
Um, Back in those days, I had one of those you remember those old portable Macintoshes? Like the very first
Yeah.
Macintoshes, they were kind of rectangular, they had
Uh-huh.
a built-in screen.
Yep.
I had one of those. And if I would use that writing a paper or something for hours on time, then my hands would begin to hurt. And I would just notice that would be regular whenever I did it. But then it grew and it grew and it grew to the point where, I get a couple sentences in and my hands are hurting. And I get more and they're hurting more. And
Yeah.
then they will hurt for hours afterwards or days afterwards. Be sensitive, that type of stuff.
Yeah. And the assumption is you're what's the assumption? You're broken, like
That's
something's
what I was
wrong.
told. I was told that this is happening because I'm have repetitive strain injuries, that I'm giving myself repetitive strain injuries through these activities. And, I think it was a different time. I think even within mainstream medicine, I think that people are more recognizing that your body isn't fragile, that your body is strong, and that you can do a lot of the things that you can't, that you might worry you can't do.
Yeah.
Um, and so
Uh-huh.
resuming that activity and, going back to pain reprocessing therapy, going back and saying, actually, I'm safe. I think that was big for me.
Yeah. And that in this case, that safe meant that my body is more resilient than I'm giving it credit for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That my physicians were giving it credit for. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, we
Mhm.
talk about nocebos sometimes, and I was getting a big old nocebo from the physicians at that point.
Okay, so for those who are watching who are familiar with placebo but not nocebo, can you unpack
Yeah, so I
what
mean,
nocebo is?
a placebo is when, you have some information which lets you know that you're okay and makes you feel better, and that makes you better in some sense. And a nocebo is some information which says you're not okay and it makes you worse. It's a self-fulfilling negative prophecy.
Yeah,
Uh,
and we actually have studies that show that, don't we?
we do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. Okay, so you're going to doctors and you're getting basically a nocebo effect.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm going to doctors. I'm getting the nocebo effect. So I graduate from high school. I'm off to college. And then it really gets bad my junior year. I take a year off.
Ooh.
And what I know how to do is computer work. I get a job testing computer software, and that gets really, really bad. And I save up some money from the job and I go traveling in Germany because I was studying German. And for like, I was just that's when it expanded. So it was typing and mousing on the backs of my hands primarily.
Okay.
And then so I would switch to handwriting. So handwriting becomes really important to me. I have to be able to handwrite because I can't type and mouse. It's the only way I can communicate,
Yeah.
do my homework. So I'm handwriting and then my thumb starts hurting, like terrible writer's cramp in my thumb. So while I was traveling to Germany, I taught myself, I think in the airport, how to write left-handed. And then what do you know? The left hand starts getting bad. Yeah. And sometime when I was in college, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't have any way of communicating. You have to communicate. You have to be
Yeah.
able to communicate with people. So, or like written communication. So I say, all right, this is when the beginning of text to speech, sorry, speech to text dictation software was coming out. So I get one of the old, really old pieces of software. And wouldn't you know it, I read a New York Times article that says a bunch of people who are using the Dragon Dictate, they get irritated vocal cords. So what do you think happened to me? I got irritated vocal cords. And, I would see doctors about it and they would say, oh, you have to do the easy onset, like the vowels at the beginning of words. You got to put an H in front of them and stuff like that because you don't want to irritate your vocal folds and get nodules on them. All of these things I remember. All of these things were huge issues in my life. They are not huge issues in my life now. Everything is okay now. I type all I want, handwrite all I want. It's all back to normal, but that's not how it felt back then.
Wow. I just feel in wow right now. Um, Yeah, it's really crazy how we can be warnings.
Yeah.
Warnings can be so dangerous. Um, here I am
They were for
speaking.
me.
They were for you and they were for me, and I would say they are for just a lot of people that already have a tendency maybe towards
There you go. Yep.
worrying or whatever you want to title it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the nocebo effect becomes very real.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so now your symptoms, you're starting to feel it in your vocal cords.
Yeah. Oh, and testing software. The ergonomics of the desk isn't perfect, so I hunch up my shoulders like this, and all of a sudden, the top of my trapezius, all this area, the muscles start getting really hurting.
Uh-huh.
And then for years, I'm like, oh, okay, I got to support the muscles. I get one of those, those like really high back executive
Yeah.
chairs. So I
You look
get one of
really
those and I
important in
have to
them.
work in that all the time. I'm completely chained to that chair. And this is like in my first job out of college. So I'm getting my first full-time job. I have my own apartment. Um,
Mm,
and uh and
mm.
I'm chained to this chair and I can't handwrite and I can't use a computer and I'm a computer guy.
Yeah.
Um, so that was exciting. I was
That was
terrified.
exciting.
I was terrified. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you stop going to doctors at some point in time?
Yeah, it just felt like it wasn't helping. They were all saying the same thing. You have a repetitive strain injury. And I think that they, in their gut, they felt like my body could do more, but the diagnosis that they gave me, that was the real nocebo.
Yeah.
They would say, I think you can do more, but I would say, but you're telling me I have this pain and it's getting worse because of repetitive strain.
Mm,
So that doesn't make any sense. So I trusted my own experience. I
yeah.
did activities, it got worse. So I said, I guess I shouldn't do more activities.
Yeah. Okay, so before we hop to you, finding mind body or TMS, anything else in the part of your journey where you're struggling that you think the watchers that would be helpful for those who are, still in that part of it?
Yeah. I think probably more in the recovery portion, but um, I mean, we did talk about how my mother died, and I know that, I think for a lot of people, introspection and or journaling is important.
Mhm.
Um, and I think hearing patient stories, or, recovery stories, it's helpful to know about some of the introspection they went through. I knew that my mother was going to die she had terminal diabetes, juvenile diabetes. Um, and I knew that she was going to die for quite a few years, for as long as I can remember. And so I think that made a psychology in me of being a worrier. So, as we've been talking, worry and nocebo effect has been coming up. And, I think maybe that kind of plays into um, the, like how that those bad 18 years went.
Yeah.
So we're going to start fast forwarding a lot. So
Okay.
in the next, so I think, I don't know, it's like 13 years where I'm trying to support myself and I'm terrified every day. How do I support myself
Yeah.
long term? But yeah, during that time, I think that I forget what you called it, but you said something about a tendency that we may have.
Yeah.
Um, to catastrophize, to have anxiety. I think that was contributing to the pain and anxiety cycle that was fueling my symptoms.
Yeah.
And so the whole neuroplastic pain diagnosis works really, really well for me because I was seeing these danger cycles all of the time, and the pain itself was very, very threatening. And so I guess I would say it just speaks to how important it is to break that cycle and,
Mhm.
you know, keep listening to these stories and keep looking inside of yourself until you can, find the way to find the equanimity and change the way that you relate to your symptoms.
Yeah.
Um, I think that would be my takeaway from that.
Yeah.
And maybe some introspection can help on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Introspection, because if we look at why we might have a tendency towards fear. It sounds like for you, um, you went through a really rough time as a child.
Yeah.
Uncertainty.
Yeah. 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 Because, you know, when you're a kid, your mom is everything.
Yeah.
And I knew she was going to die.
Yeah.
So at some point, I don't have terrible memory of my past, but the I yeah, that was not a surprise to me.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, so here you are now in college.
mhm.
You've still got pain. When is it that how long were you in chronic pain before you discovered mind body?
um, 18 years.
18 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. 16 through 34. It was a long time.
Okay. Yeah. And what
That's, I
happened?
think, part of why I feel so passionately about it and why I think it's so important and want to, that's why I'm here today is because it was the most important thing in my life in some ways,
Yeah.
top three.
Mhm. Okay. So tell me about how you found TMS or mind body syndrome.
Oh, so I'm living in Boston
Okay.
and I leave technology and I'm teaching. I do one-on-one teaching so that I don't have to write or type anything.
Okay.
Tutoring kids with learning disabilities.
Oh, wow.
And then I say, nope, I'm going to try and be a prof. And so I'm going to graduate school and I say, look, I'm doing doctoral work in economics. I've done a little bit of everything. And it kind of shows that, yeah, there are many stages to our life these days. Um, and like for all my homework, someone else writes out, like we do it together, and then I get to turn in the a photocopy of theirs. And
Wow.
I have assistants to take my exams. I had a woman who I dated for 4.5 years was my scribe when I took a 2-hour qualifying exam for like to get into the doctoral program for the master's level. So that was interesting. Luckily, she's a great person. But that's a funny story, I think. Um, and
You dated your accommodation.
no, we broke up, and then I was like, hey, I need some help.
Oh, you had dated her first.
Yeah, I was
Interesting.
taking an exam, yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
anyway, so yeah. Um, And at a certain point, I'm like, I'm in Boston. This is a great place to be sick. So I'm going to figure this out. And at this point, I can't use a computer, like practically at all. A sentence is all. I can't mouse, can't type, can't handwrite. So I dictate everything. And I had just finished my second year paper, and I had hired assistance to transcribe for it. The technical word is amanuensis, that you know if you've been through this system. Anyway, so I hire someone to help me gather my medical records. Kim was her name, and or is her name, and she helps me gather my records. And at a certain point, she says, "Hey, Rob, do you think there's any chance that this is mind body?" And
Mm,
for 18 years, I had been trying to convince people that this was legitimate, and that was
mm,
kind of unvalidating,
mhm.
in
Okay.
the sense that I didn't want, like I think lots of people, you sometimes we very incorrectly, um, we think that mind body isn't real. Of course, that's not true at all. All pain is real. If you feel the pain, it is real. But anyway, so she said that, and I didn't know what to make of it, but I, um, like challenging my own ideas. So I said, well, why don't you investigate it? So she went online and she found some patient success stories of people who had had terrible, terrible RSI over years, like mine, that just seemed to get worse no matter what they did. And I was like, oh my gosh, this looks just like me. So
Yeah.
she printed out these stories and she gave them to me, and I said, "Wow, that looks like me." And that really made me think. So
Yeah.
for me, and that was the key of what started me on activism and wanting to build a wiki is I want for me, because I may forget this, because I had kind of done mini recoveries in the past. I thought I might forget this. I want a place that I can go to that'll have an awful lot of patient stories.
Oh,
And I don't want it posted by physicians because what are their incentives? Am I necessarily
okay.
going to trust that? I don't want it posted by anyone else
Mm,
other than the people themselves. And so I made a place that would aggregate links to people's stories that they had posted on their own. In the early days of the internet, when everybody was idealistic and they were like, you've got control over your own publishing and, putting stories up on forums, and they were powerful. They were long form stories and you saw yourself in them.
mm,
But
yeah.
so that's how it tied in. That's how what got me into activism for neuroplastic symptoms. But the yeah, it was Kim. It was
So
Kim.
Kim introduced you, and how much later did you start the TMS Wiki?
Kim helped me. Um,
Oh,
Yeah. So, uh, well, I mean, she had done such a great job of helping me get medical care. Um, so how did that go? So I think it was like November, December when she suggested the diagnosis. And then my recovery was, I don't know, like 60, 70% done in a couple months. And then I was like, wow, this is amazing. I want to collect these. Hey, Kim, do you want to help?
yeah.
Um, it's it's a big job starting a wiki. And so, yeah, she helped me out.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
And so I find it fascinating that here you are with RSI,
Yeah.
um, and you're building a website.
I don't ever say anymore.
So it must
I'm
have.
getting my life back.
Okay, so it started reducing. So here's the climax, right? Like
Yeah.
your life has gotten really small,
Yeah.
and now you start expanding it because you've realized what it is.
Exactly. Exactly. And to some degree, I think the process of healing for me, I think, does often involve a lot of stories. Finding the people that you relate to. And I
Mm,
just want to honor and recognize that some of the people watching this may not be as lucky as I was. I think I was lucky and in the sense that my symptoms were very activity based, and that made my recovery easy because all I had to do was resume the activities.
yeah,
And sure enough, as I had noted, um, the symptoms got worse at first
yeah.
for about a week, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
But then they stopped getting worse. And then after another week or two, they started getting better.
Huh.
Um, and that gave me tremendous hope and belief that I could get better.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, that was a very, uh, it was a very, I'm sure that there's some sort of jargon that people use in terms of overcoming the kind of the fear cycle and a very, very strong signal to say you're safe, a very yeah, powerful
Tangible
thing in my brain
experience.
saying, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I want to do this more. So at that point, actually, so the same girlfriend that was the scribe for me for that big exam, for the qualifying exam, um, I'd gone jogging with her back when we were dating. And I had there was like a little we were jogging through a park and there was a little rut and my knee came down and it hurt my knee. And then again, anything which I used and I relied on and I loved, any part of my body that I needed like that, now my knee is a problem.
Yeah.
My knee was a problem for 15 years afterwards. I could still feel the symptoms. And uh, so, um, so yeah, that was an issue and it just got worse and worse and worse. So the first thing for me was taking back walking, and saying, okay, I'm going to walk to the university as a student. I'm going to walk to the university now instead of biking. And yeah, so that gave me the confidence to start. I think the next thing was handwriting. Sorry, it was typing. I was like,
Okay.
yeah, I want to type. So that was the next activity I took back.
Yeah. Uh, take
And
back.
also, there was a change in my brain. As I learned about the mind-body connection, there was the recognition that, okay, there is this real thing out here, and my old experience may be guiding me in the wrong direction, and I want to lean into that. I want to trust the part of me that's saying this can be different. I want to take that risk of trusting.
Yeah.
So that
Okay.
was a conscious decision for me.
We are talking about breaking the fear pain cycle right now,
Yeah.
fear avoidance cycle.
Yep.
And you're saying words like take back,
And pain. Yeah, definitely in pain. Yep.
fear,
But take back, yes.
yeah, like you're taking back, like kind of the authority that you have over these activities.
Yeah. Yeah. And expanding my life, as you were saying.
Expanding
Yeah.
your life. Yep. And you're doing that both, it sounds like I'm hearing you say it both emotionally and logically. Like you've kind of you've made this decision.
Yeah.
I'm going to overcome this.
Yeah.
If this is the thing, I'm going to do it.
Well, I mean, before I had always made the decision I wanted to overcome it. I just didn't feel like I could. And I've made the decision that actually this might work. I'm a
Mm,
pretty logical guy. Like I'm pretty analytical, kind of, a right brain or left brain, whichever it is. So that's how I made my personal progress.
okay. Was
Again,
like
I think it's a lot about finding people who you relate to and seeing yourself in them for recovery.
so in the Boulder back pain study, I heard I don't know who was talking about it. Alan, I don't know who was talking about. The some of the brain imaging that changed was after people went through
Yeah.
their 8 sessions, their believing, learning, thinking part of
Yeah.
their executive functioning brain shifted in its beliefs.
Yeah.
Not we're not just talking emotion here. We're talking
Yeah.
about reason and logic that you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like reason and logic is a profound ally in the struggle to get better. Like it's really powerful. Like the evidence sheets.
Hmm.
This was something really powerful for the evidence sheet
Yeah.
that I could put down and say, like is what can I do? What are my limitations? Well, I took back walking. Maybe I can take back this. So I teach right now. Here's something a little bit more recent. I teach right now, and I love computers. I actually have four monitors like this.
Wow.
And when I teach, there is a writable um, monitor down here that I draw on to make diagrams.
Huh.
And holding a pencil, a kind of heavy stylus up like this, kind of made that exact thing hurt. And so when that pain came back, um,
Mhm.
making the decision that I'm safe, that, okay, it's going to come back. It's going to be worse for a week and a half, but it's not like, and there's a lot of people. I know someone right now who says, look, if your body says no, you got to stop. And I'm not going to say how it was should be for anyone else, but for me,
Yeah.
my body was hurting, but it wasn't saying no, I was safe.
Yeah. I'm similar to you in that. Like when I get those initial pain responses where my brain, for whatever reason, is perceiving something as dangerous,
Yeah.
my brain is inviting me to challenge that, to
Yeah.
say, no, th-
Yeah.
there's nothing dangerous about me holding this thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So pretty soon after the activism, I started doing the wiki, and we set up a forum, a peer support forum, and a lot of my approach to healing from neuroplastic symptoms is drawn from everything I learned from a really engaged um, being a member of that community, reading other people's stories, thinking about them, empathizing with them, and going through their healing journey with them. Um, and one phrase that I loved that worked really well is just kind of this random weird phrase that I came up with, but it works for me. There are certain people who are like lions of the forum. Like you can tell your story and you're in fear and they say, no, you're fine. And suddenly you believe that they're fine. And I think that someone like a coach
Mm.
or a physician especially can be like that.
Yeah.
And I think Dr. Sarno was amazing at that, that he could tell you with such confidence in his voice, and he's a physician and he's examined you,
Yeah.
that you're fine, Well, if you don't have that, then you have to use your frontal cortex for that, that logical part,
Mm,
the planning part that you were talking about.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then you start you and Kim start creating
Yeah.
TMS Wiki,
Yeah.
which is still a thing today.
Yeah.
Um, t- Tell me about where you currently are in life and because I know you're involved in I'm gonna get the new acronym wrong.
Yeah.
ANTS? No.
Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms, ATNS.
Yeah.
It looks a little bit like attention. Like
Okay.
attention is so important,
Nice.
and we want to
Mm,
get your attention. So ATNS. Yep.
TNS, which is actually where I first saw you, but I mean, this is the first time we've actually
Yes.
met.
Yeah.
But there are, just for the people who are watching, there are clinician specific panels, and then there are panels that are actually open and free to the public, right?
Yes. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
And you,
wonderful. They're amazing. Yeah.
they are, and you're one of the panelists on those currently.
Yeah.
So those are watching should definitely pop in because they're free and you can send in your questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people do. We're very, very lucky. Recently, we have a new staff, or we have amazing staff, and Brenna is the person who will handle that. And all board members are invited to participate in that.
Okay.
And yeah, I think well, like I said, I think people's stories are important. And there's a vast variety of amazing practitioners on the board, and they will participate.
Yeah. So just
And the
going back.
membership thing, I think, has been transformative. There are also things for members, members only and practitioners only as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really allowed the nonprofit to do much more good in the world.
Yeah. I agree. I pop in as often as I can to both sets
Yay,
of
thank
those.
you.
So yeah. Um, so for those who are on the healing journey, we definitely talked about graded exposure, expanding your life, ending the fear pain cycle.
Yeah.
Um, if you were to give like three of your, let's just say, favorite tools as suggestions or ideas for people to try out, what would you say your three favorite were for healing? And then I'm eventually going to ask you for three pitfalls.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Oh
then we'll
boy.
end the interview. You have like 7 minutes to answer all six of those.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the first thing is self-compassion.
Okay.
My wife at one point said, I wish you were more in touch with your feelings,
Mm,
which I really took seriously. And I learned
mm,
about my feelings, or I paid more attention to them. I tried to get in touch with them. And I think that was perhaps especially for men. I don't know. But listening to those feelings and being kind to those feelings. At the Wiki, I did a lot of work with Alan Gordon. He very graciously did like 5 or 4 webinars with us, which are still posted, and they were amazing. People would call in and he would work with them, and I learned a lot from them. Um, and a lot of what he would emphasize is people would beat themselves up, and he would say, something like, I'm sad that you're beating yourself up like that. Why are you being so mean? And I'm not going to characterize him very well, but he taught me how to pay attention to myself and be kind to myself and not scare myself, but also be nice to myself. And when your nervous system is in a healthier spot, um, then uh, everything is going to be better. It's going to be much easier to heal. So that's really that's the most important thing
yeah.
is learn how to maybe with everything that you've gone through, you have silenced the part of yourself that listens to your own needs.
Mm,
But stop doing that. Pay a lot of attention to it and prioritize it. You could call it the inner child if you want.
Hmm.
honor it. It doesn't always get what it wants, but pay attention to that. So that's the big one. Number two, I think, is participate in a community. Um, you know, these days, the Facebook communities are really, really popular, but I like the old style forum communities because there are fewer people and you get to know them and you learn their stories. Take some time to learn and get to know them as people and understand their healing journey. And then sometimes you can see things about them that it'll take a little bit longer to see them about yourself. So I really, and I guess that'll lead into my third point, which is that this really is a healing journey. That often, if there are neuroplastic symptoms, those are a sign of, in my case, maybe some of the messages that the world is scary that I got from knowing that my mother would die, and then from living in a world without that mother afterwards as a child.
Yeah.
Um, and there may be these things that you have an opportunity to grow. So embrace that opportunity to grow and learn how to be kind to yourself um, through taking that healing journey.
Yeah.
So I think those would be that. Um, for a pitfall, um, I would say uh, one pitfall is, I guess, letting your anxiety hijack you. That I think it's really important to respect one's anxiety, but I think that
Mm.
it's important to guide that anxiety and recognize that you aren't that anxiety and that it may not be helping you,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and uh, to perhaps take a meditative approach to it. I've seen a lot of people come through the forum who really felt like they explored mindfulness as a way to be kinder to themselves. And it felt, when I watched their growth, it felt very healthy to me.
Mhm.
And I do love research, and there's a lot of research to to show that that helps. Now, I'm not saying meditate to beat your pain.
Yeah.
That's going to be limited.
Hmm.
It's not this treatment approach. It's maybe use mindfulness to pay more attention and remove the cause of your pain.
Yeah.
To be more compassionate to yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think in mindfulness, you step back from the emotions that you have and you can label them, or and this was part of my kind of healing journey that I think I've been able
Yep.
to, you know, but yeah, you can label them, but I think that there's a certain amount of distance in mindfulness. And like Howard Schubiner, another co-founder of the ATNS, he is a big meditator. Alan is a big meditator. Alan Gordon. Um, they were real pioneers in this field going back 15 years. And so I think that, at least they were when I talked to him about it many years ago. Um, and Howard taught meditation. Um,
Right.
and then lastly, let's see, other,
Yeah.
I think so. So sometimes people are so triggered in their emotional things. Sometimes you'll see them show up, and I think in those cases, it feels like they need to work. It's always better if you can work with someone. That will always accelerate and you will learn more and you will come out of it a stronger person. But I think that there are some people, they'll show up on the forum and you can tell from their tone that they need someone, like they need one-on-one. They need kind of that lion of the forum,
Okay.
someone who can interact with them and help them contain their emotions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any other pitfalls. Uh, oh, well, I mean, I guess I'm going to copy. Uh, Alan is a friend, and so and I was influenced by it. I learned a lot from him. So I'm going to say also that you know his idea of outcome independence,
Yeah.
that and more generally, your goal is to become more mindful and compassionate towards yourself and to overcome the fear, to
Mhm.
take ownership for that process and believe in that process. And that's all you have to do.
Mm.
Don't worry about what's happening day to day. You know, that's going to take care of itself. Trust the process. Don't measure the symptoms on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Um, do resume the activities, and follow all the stuff that you're learning everywhere else. Do all of that stuff,
Yeah.
but just focus on the process, not the
Yeah.
outcome.
Yeah, I'm hearing you say kind of these two things, which there's like this power or this boldness or this courage
Mhm.
that comes with reintroduction of what we've avoided.
Mhm.
But there's also this like gentleness um, by which we deal with
Yeah,
our souls or inner child or these parts of you that
yeah,
are um, hurting and anxious.
exactly. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. And I think the only way to be gentle and kind to yourself is sometimes um, to be bold like that.
Hmm.
So Arlene Feinblatt, the main
Uh-huh.
therapist who worked with Dr. Sarno, she is a huge fan of something called intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy,
Yeah.
ISTDP. And in ISTDP, we could spend years studying it. But when I've listened to it and learned about it, sometimes there are angry confrontations with voices from the past, but it comes out of caring and loving and wanting to be good to yourself. So that's that same duality where you love yourself, and so you get angry at the voices inside yourself. I don't know if that's right for everyone. I
Yeah.
just know I've seen good progress. And
Yeah.
for me, it's not the anger thing. I don't do the anger thing. I guess I do the firm thing though.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it isn't really personal, I
I,
think.
I see
We
it as
discover this ourselves.
standing up for yourself to yourself, because you might be carrying these voices that
Yes.
are either yours or they might have been learned from somebody else and an experience in your life, and
Yes.
they're controlling you.
Yes.
They're kind of in the driver's seat, and so sometimes, yeah, it's not angry towards myself. It's more like recognizing that part of me actually needs me to step into, for me, it's the power that God has given me
Yep. Yep.
over these fear thoughts. Um,
Absolutely.
and that is the most compassionate thing we can do
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Love it.
Very true.
Okay, so we've gone over the time that told you that we would go for. It's
All
already,
right. Well, there's room for editing if you need it.
yeah, just take
How big
chunks
of a
out.
deal.
No, I'm not. I'm gonna put it in as it is.
Good.
Any final words that you want to say to people who are watching?
No, just thank you for putting these resources out there.
Yeah,
I think
well,
that's wonderful. I think it's wonderful that you're having these guests on, and yeah, and keep doing it. Thank you.
yeah, back at you. Thanks for still running
We'll spread the
TM.
word. Yep.
Yeah, yep,
Go
I
to the
will. We
yep.
are. All right. Thanks, watchers. Thanks for being here. I'll put all Rob, you don't work with people, do you? Do you work one-on-one with people with TMS?
No, I don't. Never have. I kind of wanted to just be an activist, and that was my only thing.
Nice. Okay. I will not put his personal information on that.
But if people have questions, I could maybe go to the YouTube comments.
Okay, great. Yep, that sounds great. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Take care.